Well, welcome to another episode of Anomalies. I'm your host today, Dave Jinks. Dan Hall is also here. His audio is not coming through, so he's just here in spirit. He'll be asking a lot of questions for me to pass along to our guest, who goes by the name of HooDoo Tall. And we are delighted to have Mr. Tall or Mr. Hoodoo or however he wants to be addressed. and and the first question we do have for you, Hoodoo Tall, is who is Hoodoo?
Yeah, that makes sense. And also to explain my attire, I moved
Yes.
out here to be near the Bradshaw Ranch so that I could study it more often. And I have to be outside right now to get a good signal. And it's really, really cold out. So
And
that's,
sure, sorry, let everyone know about the Bradshaw Ranch. Now I know that Dan is typically our recruiter. He finds most of our guests, and he was fascinated in your story and your research because he's fascinated in the Skinwalker Ranch and other ranches,
yeah,
other areas of where you might call a vortex of weird, weird stuff. And
yeah,
it's our understanding that that's what you have documented and are encountering where you are. But please let our audience know where you are and how you got there too.
sure, sure. So it was this is really all John Lear's fault. I don't know if you're familiar with John Lear, but he was like a mentor to me, kind of, and he passed away
Yes.
this year, unfortunately. But,
Yes.
uh, for the last 15 years, I would go to John's house and sit with him and talk for hours on end and go over all these photographs. And he would tell me all about Bob Lazar. And
Hmm.
I got to the point where I knew new UFOs were real, but I wanted to see one. That's how I understand things. If I can experience it for myself, then I can really start to understand it. So,
Hmm.
I was curious as to where I could go on the planet to try to see one, and I started with the Rendlesham Forest incident. Um,
Right.
John Lear told me he knew for sure that incident happened. He said he talked to guys on that base, they swore up and down. And so in that incident is a coordinate list of special places on the planet.
Uh-huh.
And I figured I would start to the one closest to me and just start there, which was Sedona, Arizona.
Yes.
And so my first trip out here was like maybe 8 years ago, 8 or 9 years ago. And there's a lady that does UFO tours with military night vision, Melinda Leslie. And so I went out with her on a tour, and I mean, we saw loads of UFOs. I didn't know how to explain it. It was really
Mm.
mind-boggling. It's really a magical thing to see them for yourself. And I was pretty much hooked. I would spend every year after that, all my vacation days, I would save them up and make an extended camp trip out here for like 10 days at a time. And then eventually I was making 2 10-day camp trips a year. And I was just trying to come out here and see more UFOs. And
So
as I was doing,
can you tell us what just briefly what some of those crafts uh how they appeared to you? I mean, and what kind of
sure.
instruments were you using? Was it all naked eye? Was it some, I know there's the telescopes with the infrared or the, different types of technology.
Sure. Yeah. I've used Gen 3 military night vision plenty of times, but also naked eye. Like when I
Yeah.
would camp out here, we would just sit out in the campsite and watch them from the campsite without any kind of tech or any kind of aids. We would just sit there and you can see them.
Mm-hmm.
Few hours after sunset, the sun has already gone past the horizon, so it's out of our view, but it's still lighting up the sky above us. So that's usually the best time out here to see them because they're being lit up by the sun, but the sky is getting dark. So um,
Are they
at that point,
typically lights? I mean, do you see different
yeah,
shapes of
no,
craft? Do you see lights?
most typical thing are balls of light coming and going from the atmosphere. Like you watch them and they disappear or they appear and move, and
Mhm.
they'll make strange movements and weird angles and change trajectory and speed and all that kind of thing. And they'll fly by in formation of up to 10.
Mm.
There has been one night when I got to see the actual craft. I mean, it came flying over our head low, maybe a couple thousand feet.
Ah.
several times. And with military night vision, you could see the craft, and you could see light was bending around it. It looked fluid, almost like the movie Predator's armor. Like
Hmm.
you could see
Mhm.
light moving around the craft. And then when you take the night vision down, there's nothing there in the sky at all. You put the night vision back and you can see it. Take them down, you can't see it. And if you hit it with a laser pointer, it lights up kind of like if you hit the laser at a water bottle. Like it refracts all the light, like there's a metal object there, but you can't see the object. It's really bizarre.
Yeah.
Um,
So this is
I've seen
around Bradshaw.
this is just around the area of Sedona, Arizona. Yeah. So
Okay.
I'd been coming here for a few years, and uh, at one point I couldn't get many people to come with me, so I'd make the trips by myself. And I was out hiking by myself looking for some petroglyphs. I was off grid. I was in this dried out creek bed, and I started finding petroglyphs, even finding petroglyphs of aliens and an actual Bigfoot and carvings of Bigfoot footprints in the ground everywhere.
Hmm.
And then I found an actual live, fresh Bigfoot track and handprint. It put its knuckles down and its foot. And
Mhm.
I kind of went into shock actually, because I was, first of all, I was out in the middle of nowhere by myself, and it was like 120 degrees. I was out of water, and
Oh.
luckily I grabbed pictures and video of it. Um, but then I started to realize there's more than UFOs out here. So went down a YouTube rabbit hole and found this video about the Bradshaw Ranch. It was a presentation by this guy, Tom Dongo, and his presentation showed more pictures and video of evidence than I've ever seen collected in one location. I mean, and so many different things happen there. There's UFOs, there's Bigfoots, there's little gray aliens, there's other really strange creatures that leave very bizarre footprints behind. There's even been dinosaurs walking around on the property that people have seen. Like it's almost too much. But I mean, I've seen the evidence of it myself. So, I mean, something weird is happening there. And so, over the years, I had so much collected on my cell phones, videos of UFOs and footprints and pictures. And so I reached out to this videographer named Damien, and he came out, and I told him originally, like, hey, come out, bring your cameras, you know, come with me on some trips. Maybe after a couple years, we'll have enough footage to put together maybe a documentary about all this. And he came out that first trip, and it took 3.5 days, and we were done. I mean, we had so much happen,
Wow.
and that, yeah, we really got it all in that quick. Like the phenomena showed up for us. It was pretty remarkable. So HooDoo Tall came about because of that. When we were going to do a documentary, at first I didn't even want to be in it. For me, this is about showing this phenomena is real by presenting the evidence of it. And, the evidence of it is out here. So I didn't want to be in the documentary. Damien kind of convinced me to do it, said it would be better as, if there's a person there talking instead of just voiceover. So I agreed to do that. And then I said, well, this isn't about me. Let's make up a pseudonym so that I try to keep the focus on the evidence itself and the phenomena. This isn't. I'm not like a Bob Lazar character. I'm just
Yeah.
presenting what I find. And so, yeah, we use the Wu-Tang Clan name generator, and I put my name into that, and it showed me HooDoo Tall, and I was like, "That's it. That's what we're
Yeah.
doing." Like, it's
You
it's just
you
just
can't beat
weird
that.
enough. Yeah,
Kidding.
yeah,
Um, so that's how you got the pseudonym, and then,
yeah.
well, so we'll talk about the documentary, the film, but Dan wants me to make sure to ask where, I mean, is the location of the ranch well known? I mean, compared to
It actually
Skinwalker
took
or other
me,
places,
yeah, and I'll
hard to
touch on
find.
Skinwalker too, but
Yeah.
it took me a while to find the ranch after I heard about it. It's about 8 or 9 miles out on dirt roads into the middle of nowhere. And there's like no reason to be out there. You don't see the ranch until you're at it. I mean, you could be 50 feet away from it and you can't see it, just the way the terrain and stuff like that is. So,
Wow, so it's
um,
pretty secluded then. Do you know what do you know about the Bradshaws?
pretty good amount now. Bob
Okay.
Bradshaw was the one who kind of established the place. There is an old homestead adobe house there, so somebody was there probably in the 20s or 30s. But Bob Bradshaw was big into the westerns, and so he had built a movie set out there, and they filmed like I think 50 movies, Western
Hmm.
movies out there. Yeah, Elvis was in one, like John Wayne was in one,
Hmm.
and then it seems to be about the late 80s that this stuff started happening there, and well into the 90s, and they started talking about it. And it was they even had the news come out a bunch of times, and the news would show up hearing rumors of UFOs, and then a UFO would go overhead. So they were getting a little recognition here and there, and then suddenly uh, Congress bought the ranch, and there's newspaper articles that say Congress pays to acquire Bradshaw Ranch, and so
Hmm.
now when you there's a sign there now that says it's being leased to the University of Arizona for agricultural study. So I just stay off that part of the property, and I go to the parts I can and stuff like that, and I don't disturb anything. I feel more like a caretaker than anything else. But
So how did the
uh,
government, what do you know what part of the government? I mean, did
no,
Congress pass some sort of law that
yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know
okay.
very many stories of Congress buying ranches, though.
Well, yeah, I don't even know how that would work. I mean, how do you pass you write up a
I mean,
proposal, a resolution, what
our
but someone
guess.
acquired it then.
Yeah, and so I have a couple locals out here I've been collaborating with, and they told me they could show me the fence to a military base. It's maybe a couple miles from the ranch now. So,
Hmm.
maybe they acquired the land and the land around it so they could try to study the place, is my guess. Because I don't see any activity there. Sometimes I see big uh, tire tracks from like a military truck that's driven onto the property and hasn't driven off the property. The tracks only go in, they don't come back out. So little weird things like that happening. One time I was walking by the front gate and I heard somebody cough, like and
Hmm.
I mean, I'm telling you, there's nobody out there. There had to have been somebody in like a ghillie suit in the bushes within 20 or 30 feet of me.
How
But
big is it? Does it, I mean, are there places where you could conceivably have an underground base or somewhere where the military resides,
definitely.
or is it not that
I mean,
extensive?
on the map from a few miles from there is a place called Government Canyon. It's right at the mouth of a bunch of canyons and mountains and stuff like that. So I mean, it's
Wow.
out in the middle of nowhere and the perfect place to just be observed off grid. And
Hmm.
oh, actually, just this year they stopped you from camping out there too. You used to be able to camp up to like maybe 300 yards from the ranch, and now they've closed it off a few miles from there. You can't even camp out there now. So I don't know if that had anything to do with the ranch or activity or anything, but
Hmm.
definitely been getting a little more protected. And that's the other thing about me moving out here is because, eventually it's going to be shut down. Eventually it's going to be gated and fenced off to where you're not even allowed anywhere near it. So I wanted to try and get as much time there as I could because the phenomena there's real. There's so many bizarre footprints, and we show loads of it in the HooDoo Tall documentary, and it's just free on YouTube. Anyone can go watch it. But I'm trying to see if it's possible to bond with the phenomena and
Hmm.
maybe encourage encounters that way by having it get more familiar with me and my intentions, maybe something like that. I don't think you can sneak up on these things. I don't think the Bigfoot is the big monkey that evolved on Earth. It's got to be something more than that because the way it moves and the way it can selectively leave footprints. I mean, those just aren't ways that animals act. How does it leave? 4 to 12 footprints of a creature that weighed like 1,500 pounds, and then nothing before it and nothing after it, which is something I find out. I find that out here all the time.
Mm.
And I would love to know how they do that. If it's just some big monkey, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, definitely. So do you know, well, I kind of asked this question already. Do we know why the government, whoever it was, decided to acquire it? Was there any announcement? Was there anything
No, no,
that you can
not not
see? It
not
was
much
just,
that I've seen. The only thing I
yeah.
could think of is that they wanted to prevent them from talking about what was happening there because they weren't shy about talking about it anymore. And it just seems like they wanted to bring that to an end. So,
Was that they being the
um,
Bradshaws, you mean? Or
yeah, yeah, yeah. Linda Bradshaw, especially because when Bob Bradshaw passed away, and Linda Bradshaw and Tom Dongo used to research together on the ranch when Linda owned it. And, they had wild stuff. They got insane photographs. I mean, they would go into the front yard of the house and just burn through 35 millimeter film. And then they would go look through all the negatives to see if there was anything in them because it was expensive to develop film. So
hmm.
they ha- they have photographs of fully manifested humans standing right in front of them that they couldn't see with their own eyes. I mean, it's not blurry. It's like there's one in particular, this guy with black hair, and he's standing right in front of them looking away. And you can see his ear, his nose, his eyes, his whole head almost to his shoulder. And I've never seen anything like that anywhere else, to be honest. Um, One of the creatures let me get its photograph last year, and it's it was crouched down in front of the house there. And I say let me get its photo because it's the only way it's going to happen. Like I said, you can't. They know we're on the property before we even get to it. These things are something bigger than us, but
Hmm.
it crouched down and let me get some photos of it. I didn't see it with my eyes, but I mean, it's at the end of the documentary. You'll see the photo. It's big, bright, shining eyes and this big, huge, hulking body. I mean, I'm about 6'3", and I went and crouched over in the same spot and took some pictures, and it was probably about my height, but about 3 or 4 times thicker and wider than me. I mean,
Wow,
it's a massive
that's
thing.
huge.
And then 2 nights ago, I brought somebody out there. We were in the old Adobe house doing a session with a REM pod and a spirit box because he wanted to check it out. And he saw that same creature out the window behind me. And he saw it for like a minute and a half. He wasn't sure what he was looking at. And it was standing there. And then it kind of made these jumps back and forth, like if some frames of the video were missing. Like it didn't move fluidly. It moved in kind of these little teleport jumps, and it zoomed in closer and closer up to the window and disappeared.
Can
I
you?
didn't get to see it, but he did.
Wow, yeah, that's weird. Can you tell us a little bit about the tracks? I mean, have you seen different cryptids?
Yep.
Bigfoot versus, well, I mean, there are many, many stories about other types of creatures. What do you think that you've seen? I mean, have you seen the creatures themselves, other than the one that you mentioned? And then the tracks, what do they look like?
Um, I encountered a creature there once, and it was actually the first time I went there at night. It was some beginner's luck. It took me maybe 5 or 6 times going there during the day to even get used to the way that place feels, because man,
Hmm.
it's a very bizarre place to be. And at night, triple it. It's really creepy, especially if you're alone there at night. I mean, good luck. You're not going to last very long because as soon as you start hearing weird noises around you, because you can't get out of there quick.
Yeah.
You have to park and you have to walk and you have to walk down into the place. And so, but yeah, the first time I went at night, I had two friends with me who were, in their late 30s. They've been camping their whole life. I convinced them to go out there with me at like 11:30 at night. And I told them like no electronics. I'm gonna bring a Polaroid camera. I just want to shoot some Polaroids in the front yard and see if we can get a person to show up like they did. So we went down. I had one flashlight with us, but I said we're not using it. It's going in my back pocket in case of an emergency. That's it. So we all walked down there dark. I went to the front yard. They stayed kind of on this little dirt road. And I took the first picture, and all I heard was the Polaroid ejecting the photo, and like the ka-ching sound. And my two friends were freaking out. They're like, "Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Did you hear it?" I said, "No." The, the photo? And they said, "No, no, 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 over there." And they pointed. And then I stopped and listened. And then it made another noise. And this time it picked up a log that's out there. There's a couple logs out there. I picked up a log, and there's also a big wooden gate that's like a upside down U shape. And it rang that tree log, around that big horse gate like a dinner bell. Like I
Hmm.
mean, it sounded like my friends were scared for their life. I was trying to convince them to stay longer. I was like, don't run, stay, 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 stay.
Yeah.
And and then it started bashing it, like swinging it like a baseball bat and bashing it. And my one friend said, "Is there construction equipment over there? Are they tearing the buildings down?" Like that's what it sounded like. It sounded like somebody
Hmm.
tearing down the buildings over there. And I could get him to wait like another minute. We heard it do the sound 4 times. And we also heard like a thundering stampede of animals circling around us.
Wow.
So finally we made it. We went back to the car. I said, "Okay, we can go." We went and went back the next day. And sure enough, there's like these 20-inch footprints right there.
Hmm.
Um, and no signs of damage. But the other thing was, before we left that night, they turned around and went to the car. I waited a few more seconds, and I got to see it barely. So I could see its silhouette because it was dark, but the moon was out. So I could see its shoulders and head, and its eyeballs were glowing amber, like almost like an old flashlight. Remember those old flashlights when you turn them off, the bulb still glows for a little bit?
Hmm. Yeah.
They were kind of like that, kind of a soft glow. And it was looking right at us over a tree line. So it was taller than the trees and the bushes there, which puts it about 15 or 20 feet tall. And it looked at us, and then I saw its eyes turn away, and it left. And that same place where I saw it look at us, there were also footprints the next day. So they were at the spot where it was making the noise and the spot where I saw it looking at us. So that night was really pretty bizarre. I wish it could happen again, but I haven't gotten that close to one of them again. But other
Oh,
footprints I found there range from
okay.
2 inches across to
Hmm.
14 inches across. I've definitely found the dinosaur tracks. I mean, there's been two groups of people there that saw dinosaurs with their eyes. I mean, Linda Bradshaw was one of them. She saw them walk across her front yard, and another family that was out there when the Bradshaws lived there, they saw a big, huge one walking into the bushes. And I've seen tracks out there that confused the crap out of me until I heard the dinosaur stories. I was
Hmm.
like, "Oh, that's what these are. These are the dinosaurs." I mean, some of them are, yeah, 14, 15 inches across, big round with a pad and faint
Hmm.
toes, almost like an elephant track. Other ones were big three-toed ones that look like a T-Rex. I mean, there's loads of pictures of them, and I'm out here collecting footage for basically make another documentary. I mean, it's happening and it's here, and so I'm just going to spend good amounts of time collecting footage and photos of what we see out here, and then just put it all together, and hopefully people enjoy watching it and learning that this stuff's up very much real. But
Yeah,
there's
it
little
sounds like a
aliens.
zoo. It's a real
Yeah,
zoo of paranormal stuff. But before we get into, I mean, the implications of that, um, you said the documentary is on YouTube, right? What do we
yeah.
search for then?
Just HooDoo Tall documentary.
HooDoo Tall will get people there. Okay, and that's the first one. When was that
We
put
put
on?
it up. We put it up this year.
Okay, so
Um,
that's
It's
That's
gotten a good
new.
amount of views. It's up like a little over 140,000, which we were pretty impressed by because it's almost 4 hours long. But I mean,
Wow.
there's
Okay.
there's a lot of stuff to talk about. We try to we were able to get Tom Dongo's old footage and pictures from the ranch and some news clips that aired about the ranch and stuff like that and include that. So, there is some background and some stories and also the petroglyphs I found out here that show Bigfoot and three different types of aliens. And I mean, there's
Hmm.
a lot of stuff out here that all ties in together. And so, yeah, so that edit is like basically 4 episodes of a show. That's the video has them all put together. We just finished one that's like a movie edit that doesn't have some of the interviews and stuff like that that we're going to submit to film festivals. So the one on YouTube now is just yeah, has just some more interviews with people and some more information, stuff like that. So I mean, since it's on YouTube, people don't like the interviews, they can always just kind of skip through them and things like that. But
Oh yeah, that sounds amazing. I'm definitely going to check that. I assume Dan has probably checked it out. Unfortunately, we don't have his audio
right.
again, but certainly our listeners are probably making a beeline for that right now. But I'd like them to stick around and hear the discussion about what this all means. Now, the
Right.
first, I mean, there are a lot of adventurous people like yourself who might want to make a trek out there. What is the policy as far as the ranch
Be
property,
careful.
the owners, the property? I mean, can you just go poke around out there? I mean, are there clearly
Kind
marked
of,
areas
yeah.
where you can't or you can?
No, there isn't much for signage. There's a sign that says this is the Bradshaw Ranch. It's being leased to the university for agricultural study.
Mhm.
The fence goes about halfway around the property. But you got to be careful out there too. There's rattlesnakes. I've been finding huge cat tracks of some kind of mountain lion or jaguar
Wow.
coming up or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, and it's not easy to get out. The one thing that the couple times I brought people out there the first time that were, um, really into this subject, but haven't had boots on the ground in a bizarre place before, and you bring them all the way out there, and
Hmm.
within 30 seconds they want to leave, and it's like, dude, it took me an hour to get out here on that dirt road. I don't want to leave right now.
It
So,
has that feeling. Well, tell us some more about the
right.
feeling that you get. How does it feel different from somewhere else that's not a vortex of the weird?
You don't feel alone. That's for one
Okay.
thing. But also the best way I've been able to describe it is that it feels different there for some reason. Everybody seems to describe it in a way that they react to it, but it's different to each person. And so at first few times I went there, I felt spooked, like I felt slightly afraid, like because I had seen the videos of everything that's happened there, and I'm like, I'm
Mhm.
here now. Oh my God, something's gonna come out and get me. And so 5 or 6 times going there during the day, and I just realized it's not scary there. It's just different, and it's different because there's something weird happening, and there has to be a reason for that weirdness there. Whatever the source of that weirdness is might affect our bodies and the way we feel and things like that. So the weirdness is just something I would have to get used to. Now when I go there, I feel welcomed kind of and comfortable and feel kind of like I halfway belong there. That feeling. Now at night, it's a totally different story.
Mhm.
And you're out there at midnight or one alone. It's 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 tough because there are a lot of weird noises out there.
Mhm.
And I like to go out there and shoot photos, flash photos at night because I get a lot of weird things showing up in my photos. But I honestly do prefer to have one or two people with me if I can because A, witnesses, if something comes out, you have some extra witnesses. But B, you get a little bit of sense of comfort if you have a couple people there.
That makes
Um, I've,
sense. Yeah,
yeah,
I've
I mean,
definitely have.
I've been there, I've been there alone, and I go there alone, but it's not my favorite thing to do. I'm not gonna lie.
So let me ask you about your background. We've talked dozens and dozens of people here, and most of them have one foot in the paranormal arena, in one way or another. And a lot of them, or probably even most of them, have had their own, paranormal experiences
Oh
when they
yeah.
were younger, or they have their
Right.
family has all experienced similar things. I mean, tends to be a lineage, so to speak, of sensitivity to what we're calling the paranormal here. How about your background? I mean, do you have other experiences that led you into this area, or is this just something you saw and you went, wow, that's cool, I want to go to it? Tell us about your, anything you
Yeah.
want to share about your background and your family history as far as the paranormal stuff goes.
Not much history that I know of with the family, but for me, it started happening when I was 24. Weird stuff started happening in my room at night.
Mm.
Um, I would wake up and my pillow would be missing, or I used to wear glasses and I used to keep my glasses on top of my alarm clock. And so when I would wake up in the morning, I could just reach over and grab my glasses. One night I woke up and one morning I woke up and my glasses were over on my dresser at the far end across the room. And I thought, that's weird. I kept putting them on my alarm clock and then they disappeared. One night they completely disappeared. I ended up getting LASIK surgery. And about 6 months later, I woke up in the morning, went to turn off my alarm, and my glasses were on my alarm. It's suddenly just there. But then one night,
Yeah.
I woke up in a panic. Um, like I jolted up, like, and when I did that, my hands were on my chest. When I jolted up, the sheet got pulled up over my head and tight against the back of the bed, so much that the sheet pulled my head back with it.
Hmm.
And instinctively, my hands reached up and pulled the sheet down. And then when I did that, I was immediately frozen, completely locked up. Couldn't move, couldn't do anything, couldn't breathe. I was just completely frozen and locked and didn't know what was happening. It took me maybe like a minute and a half to finally loosen up and start moving again. So that was incredibly weird. Um, and then oddly enough, when, I moved out here to try to get closer to this phenomenon and encourage some more encounters, I got a job giving ghost hunting tours up in Jerome, Arizona. So now I've kind
Oh,
of added that layer to the paranormal.
okay.
And it's pretty phenomenal. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, the amount you get to hear out of a spirit box within 10 minutes will blow your mind.
So you've obviously had an interest in this, but maybe it's possible. It sounds like to me that you've got some gremlins, for lack of a better hanging
So yeah,
around you, and
well,
maybe your presence is something that can trigger interest from them, or opening up some sort of opportunity for these entities, these
and
beings, whatever you call them.
I'm starting to hear that more often now. I never applied me as an individual as a factor into the stuff I've been experiencing, especially out here. I've
Right.
just kind of figured like, hey, I mean, just go to the places where the Bigfoots are, or go to where the UFOs are, and you'll see them.
Right.
Um, but I mean, people keep suggesting that maybe there is a personal thing attached to it. But if there is, I'm convinced that anyone could do it as long as they dedicated some time to it. Just like
Yeah,
anything else, if you practice at it, you'll get good at it. So
I
maybe
think that is it. Yeah. If you have a focus and an intense interest, you tend to draw those things towards you. It's just a natural, property of the universe. It's not
yeah,
necessarily that certain people are, well, I was going to say innately like that, born that way, but that might not be true. It may be so that people are innately connected or more closely connected, but certainly when you focus your attention on things, you tend to draw it into your life. So
right.
it's hard
Yeah.
to tell what's really going on. But you did Dan wants me to ask about the comparison between Skinwalker and Bradshaw ranches. Have you visited
So,
Skinwalker? I mean,
so here's the thing.
about that.
Skinwalker Ranch has been something I've been interested in for like 20 years.
Yeah.
Even back when it was, you couldn't get there, you couldn't get any information out of them, nothing like that. I was so curious about the place. So when I found Bradshaw, I felt like hit the jackpot. I have my own little ranch. I have my own little Skinwalker ranch,
Right.
and back, 20 years ago when Tom Dongo was doing this, he tried to reach out to them. He tried to say like, hey, this place is like the counterpoint of the Skinwalker Ranch. The same type of stuff happening. Only
Hmm.
difference is there have not been any mutilations at the Bradshaw Ranch.
Mm.
Nothing's been hurt. So that's why I do feel comfortable going there still. But so I've always been super curious about the Skinwalker Ranch. And my last camp trip to Sedona was in June. I moved out here in July. I live over in Cornville now and work as a ranch hand and do the ghost tours and then spend my rest of the time investigating on my own. But
Hmm.
um, Brandon Frugel started messaging us, the owner of Skinwalker Ranch. He saw our documentary.
Hmm.
He messaged us and he was like, "Hey, is all that stuff real that you showed?" I said, "Yeah, that's why I did it. I felt selfish keeping that stuff to myself." And so he said, "Okay, when are you going back there?" I said, I'm going in June." And so we kept in touch, we messaged, and sure enough, he showed up. He brought Thomas Winterthorn from the show, and they brought their wives. They flew in on their plane, I'm guessing, and um, the first night they were here, they took me to dinner, and I didn't know what to expect, to be honest. And they sat down and 3 days. Uh, we're gonna do whatever you tell us. We're gonna go wherever you tell us to go. We want to see that stuff you showed.
Hmm.
And so that's what we did. Yeah, I mean, and I was hiking them through the heat in the dry creeks, like to show them the petroglyphs, and they were
Yeah.
such troopers. And they didn't show up with cameras or egos or anything. They were just genuinely interested in what the heck was happening. And to me, that just like rose their stock. I mean, not that my opinion of them mattered, but to me,
Yeah.
I thought what they were doing was cool anyway. But now, after spending a few days with them, I mean, we're like, Brandon said he and I are like brothers. We have the same mission. We're on the same kind of journey. And so, yeah, I really respect those guys a bunch. And yeah, he said I can come to Skinwalker. He said, when I want to let them know, and I can come up and try out some of my like guerrilla tactics that's how what we've been referring it to, because he has quite a big production. So what I'm doing out here is very low key compared to the type of stuff they're doing. But
Hmm.
I I recently
Oh, sorry, I jumped over to your documentary. I'm
oh,
down.
nice.
I'm downloading it. I want to.
Perfect.
It
Perfect.
looks very. Sorry, I interrupted you there, but I couldn't wait. I wanted to jump over it, but it looks very very well done. It's a big
Thank
file. What
you.
is it? 3.7 gigabytes for the full resolution one. So yeah, you put together a
Hmm.
a big project. I can't imagine how much work went into that. But I was going to say, we have a lot
Yeah.
of people come onto our show, and all sorts of shows, coast to coast, and Linda Moulton Howe, and all those guys who've been doing it for a long time. People come on and they have stories, but not nearly as many have put together such a project, summarizing the evidence. So that's why I really respect what you've done.
Oh,
You've got
thanks.
something that will be your legacy here, right? I mean, sure, the stories are great, and telling
Yeah.
people about your adventures is one thing, but documenting it is a whole other ball game,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So no wonder they
And
were the Skinwalker guys were impressed. It's like, wow, you
and
put
hope
this
hopefully
together.
it's yeah, hopefully it's just the beginning. We're gonna
Hmm.
we're gonna keep gathering footage. I'm out here full time now, so hopefully it gets easier. And um, we'll keep putting together projects as we come. It's opened a bunch of doors too. I've been able to I helped out a guy named Ron Mayer a couple days ago, and I was in the sequel to the Bigfoot Alien Connection Revealed. They're
Hmm.
doing a sequel documentary to that, so they came out and I filmed with them. And I also made friends with this guy named Benjamin Lone Tree.
Mhm.
Um, he lives up here in the mountains, and I think he's about 70 years old. He used to be a scientist and everything, but he's retired now. But he makes his own equipment and he can measure things that nobody else can. And so we brought his equipment out to Bradshaw and he was able to get this great data. So I mean we're being able to add a layer of scientific data to the study I'm trying to do of the property at least, you know.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I mean, he was recording these magnetic pulses followed by electrical discharges coming out of the earth right in the front yard of the house. And so now he's trying to work on some things that can measure maybe ionization and some other things like that. But he's such a brilliant guy, and I feel really lucky to even have met him and, you know, that we're both have an interest in this. It just seemed like synchronicity kind of lined us up.
It probably was, and I share the opinion that we need more. You don't want to overanalyze things and kill it with
Right.
scientific skepticism, but you do want to have some measure of
Hmm.
documentation. You want some data that people who are inclined to look at it, which
Yep.
is not most scientists, but there are, luckily, there's a small group of scientists who are willing to put their reputations on the line and look into something that might not get them grants at the university, but it certainly could expand our knowledge base as human beings. And so I'm
Right.
always thrilled when I hear something like this documentation and scientific skepticism is good, but someone who's
No, it is
willing to
good.
get out there and get their hands dirty, and literally in this case you're out in the desert or whatever. It's
Yeah,
nice
yeah.
to hear.
It gets really hot in the summer and it gets really
Wow.
cold in the winter.
Yeah,
And
that's an added complication too of what you're trying to do. But let this, of course, when we're comparing Skinwalker and Bradshaw Ranch and various other hot spots, so to speak, of the paranormal, what is your personal theory, having experienced and seen and really studied this stuff for a long time? Uh, what's your personal theory about what is happening in these particular places? Why do we get this
yeah,
vortex, I keep calling it, this congregation of so many different things that are seemingly unrelated when you're talking about cryptids and
right.
aliens and fairies, or whatever things are running around, these evil
I can
things
actually,
and
yeah,
tricksters.
no, right. No, there's both. Yeah.
Yeah, what's your
But
theory about why does that happen in particular places like this?
well, to touch on both of those, I think there are all these things are related. Um,
Hmm.
maybe indirectly, but I think that they are all fringe effects of this Earth experience we are here having. I don't think they're any of our business, really. I think they're things that are going on that contribute to keeping the Earth project going. Like, say, if Earth is a place souls incarnate so that they have the opportunity to mature their soul to reach a higher level, kind of thing. There's got to be a lot of infrastructure behind that to keep, billions and billions of souls on track and things like that. And it seems to me like maybe all of these things are related in that sense, that they're all these things related to the soul project. So they're like fringe effects of it. But it's they could be described as interdimensional or whatever the words are that people, there's so many different ways to describe the same thing. But
Yeah.
in these locations, like at Bradshaw, what it feels like is happening is that, say there's a bunch of levels to existence, dimensions or whatever type of wording you like to use. Feels like on that property, they're being compressed down and they're really thin next to each other, whereas normally there'd be a lot of space between them.
Okay.
That place, it seems to be like they're all pressed down together, or if not together, really close together, where that visible or jumping between or something like that. Um,
Yeah.
and it's because there are so many different things happening there. It's hard to say, and my goal is to try to keep going there and learning so I can eventually maybe have an understanding of what's actually happening there. That's just kind of a feeling I have about the place that doesn't really mean anything. I'm hoping to establish some sort of way of actually trying to figure it out in some sense. And
Right.
there's energy coming out of the ground there. We've already recorded that now just recently with Ben. And, maybe that energy coming out of the ground pulls down on the energy in the atmosphere above it. Say like the Van Allen belts, right?
Mm.
Maybe there's a strong vortex of energy coming out of the earth. Maybe it pulls down on something like the Van Allen belt. And maybe the UFO craft can see that. Maybe that's one way they navigate or know where their spots are. There's so many different ideas that could describe it in a way that makes sense, but we don't really have any way to know if it's true or just a bunch of nonsense. So it's fun to talk about, but I'm not putting my money on any of that yet. My goal is to just hopefully encourage physical encounters by being here more often and be given the opportunity to understand it. And that opportunity will come from the phenomena itself. They'll have to let us understand it. You know, we can't force it. And
Right.
so, that's at least my motivation now is to try to walk that path, which, there's no rule book or instruction guide or anything like that. So it's gonna, I
Well,
try to leave it.
it
What were you
it
gonna say?
well, yeah, I was just going to say it's really interesting the way you put it, that these phenomena, which I think anyone who's looked at this stuff for any significant period of time has come to the same conclusion that they're all connected at some level, whether you call it
Yeah,
hyperdimensional, multidimensional, the universal mind, whatever you want to call it. But the way you put it, compressed together, is an interesting way that I hadn't really thought about before, but that makes sense. I think of like the thinning of the veil between us and the other realms. For
right.
some reason, it's become thinner at a place like Skinwalker or the Bradshaw Ranch, or it's all become focused again, like you're saying, compressed, or I keep thinking vortex. Something has been compressed to the point where it all convenes in the same, nexus, I guess is another word. It all
Right.
it all comes together in the same place, so you get this, again, this this zoo or amusement park of the weird.
Yeah.
And Dan wanted me to ask, do you think that somebody like NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Sciences, I believe, or Brandon, how do you say his last name?
Yeah. Yeah.
Fugel. I'm not sure how you say it, but the current owner of Skinwalker, as far as I understand. What do you think? Have you heard any discussion about somebody else trying to buy the ranch for study purposes? Any rumors?
We had that conversation when Brandon was here, and they're not selling. They're just not going to sell the place. I
They just
mean, we
aren't
wanted
interested.
to, because we wanted to try to get the rights to it so we
Yeah,
could, apply some proper studying, but it's going to resort to the guerrilla tactics that we're using, where we just go out when we can. And,
yeah,
I slowly build a little team here of people who, have, unique equipment or, some sort of ability and things like that. And, that's kind of the way we've been going about it. But it's been really productive, actually. I think people like NIDS and stuff like that, they get lucky because they're there a lot, but I don't think they were encouraging encounters. The phenomena seem to be avoiding them quite a bit when they put their cameras and stuff like that up. So, that's why I'm not really going on to the ranch heavy on tech or anything like that because they can see that a mile away. I'm convinced they can see ultraviolet light. And can you imagine if you have a camera going that has a UV light or an infrared light sticking out,
yeah.
and they can see that? I mean, you're going to look like a lighthouse walking around. It's so easy to avoid you.
So
And
here come
so,
those stupid humans again,
yeah,
thinking that
yeah,
they can. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So,
exactly.
and I think you're right. I think in relation to them, I'm the dumb monkey when I'm out there. Like they're not dumb monkeys by any means. There's something bigger than that. I do think they're closer to an ET than I don't think they're native to Earth. Maybe it's dimensional or, whatever. I just don't think they're native to Earth. At least not the Bigfoots. The other footprints out there, I've been finding these really weird little three-toed ones.
Hmm.
And they were really deep. They were like 2 inches wide, but had like a 40-inch gate between them. I mean, that's a big step.
Hmm.
Like
For
I'm
such
six
small,
three.
especially, yeah.
Yeah. My gate is like 28 inches or something, and so the stuff that I find currently, not all of it, but a lot of it, I do put on Instagram. I don't really use Facebook for any of it, but I do because I didn't want to have to wait, a couple years between documentaries or something like that to kind of show that things are still happening. Yeah, I don't put it all up there, but I do put some
Right.
stuff up there. So just so people can, have a look at least. So, yeah, if you guys want to see what's at least currently happening. I mean, today I found I found it yesterday. I went back today to measure it, but these 16-inch tracks that were like 2 inches deep in the mud, but they looked like well, they didn't have toes, the shape of a shoe, but there were no tread marks on it. No
Hmm.
tread marks in any of the tracks. And I even stomped my foot in the ground and it barely went in an eighth of an inch. So yeah,
Hmm.
there's still a lot happening out here, but um
So
the
what do you think these, I'm sorry, go ahead, finish that thought.
oh yeah, yeah. No, so I was gonna say if you wanna go look and see some of the stuff that's happening now, you can check my Instagram, which is
Oh, okay.
at a baby raven. And the a baby raven came
Okay.
about because I think ravens are really wise, and I wanted to create like a symbol for those of us that are interested in all these strange subjects. I've met ghost hunters and Bigfoot hunters and witches and all this kind of stuff, but for those of us that are just into all of it,
Yeah.
I wanted to make like a little logo for us, and so I came up with a baby raven because
Hmm.
we're not wise like ravens, but we want to be through experience. And so that's what a baby raven is, right? Through
Right.
experience, it'll become wise like a raven. So that's where that thing came from. But
That's the hope. And that kind of actually dovetails with my question that I had for you, and that is that, obviously these things, these entities can be in our realm, at least some of the
hmm
time, and probably
hmm
be in other realms too that we're largely unaware of. And so they could, and like you said, they probably can see when we're using our technology. I mean, that's something that we hear from witnesses across the board. It's like,
yeah.
well, as soon as I tried to do this, the screen, the battery died, even though it was a
Yep.
100% right before, or the, I even had a personal example. I took a picture it's a long time ago of a formation that occurred on the Oregon coast in sand. It was sand circles. It's like
Oh,
33
wow.
concentric rings. Well, we had like three different types of technology, and I was just getting into this stuff at that time, and I was like,
hmm
oh, I'm going to take pictures that, well, one of them failed. The other one produced just blank pictures. And like you
Oh,
mentioned,
yeah.
this was like 35 millimeter. This was back when you had to actually develop film. It wasn't
Right.
all digital.
Yeah.
So I got blank film. And then the other one, then we had something FedExed and somebody stole it off um, our doorstep. So it was just a bunch of
Oh, wow.
weird stuff. I'm not going to attribute it all to gremlins or whatever, but you can't really help but think about stuff like that. There's just something
Yeah.
that wants to mess with it, whether it's the trickster element or it's something really trying to prevent you from gaining more knowledge. But the point is that when these entities clearly have the power to not show themselves to you, when they do show themselves, that should tell us something also. So I just, in our, kind of
Right.
our final summary here. I wanted you to talk about why do you think that sometimes you are allowed to interact or see these entities?
So I've been trying to make guesses at that, and it's it's hard because it's a very deep question.
Right.
It doesn't have a very surface level answer. And so my thought is that if life on Earth is a soul process for our souls to try to mature, um, then maybe the more effort we put into actually maturing our souls, maybe they recognize that and they're more um, willing to encounter with us because they think we can actually handle the encounter.
Mm.
I mean, it's terrifying to run into a 20-foot monster that can swing a tree around like a baseball bat. Because I saw my two best friends at the time scared for their life when they saw it. And they didn't even see it like I did. They just heard it and they were gone. I mean, so why would they want to have that encounter? They're not interested in scaring the bejesus out of people, I don't think. They have their reasons for being here when they're here. I think enlightening us maybe is an option if they're that type of being. But, that's just current idea. The more I learn and encounter and stuff, the more how I think is going to change. If you can't learn from new information, then you're really just going to be stuck in the mud the whole time. So
Yeah, for sure. And I think there is a real trickster element to the universe, the creativity that underlies things. I think that like you the
I
story
think you're
about
right.
your missing glasses, I thought
Yeah.
that's what a trickster would do. It's not necessarily to
Yeah.
teach or to scare. It's just something that's inherently creative and almost funny, and to mess with humans. I think they can't help it sometimes. They really need to just mess with our stuff
Right.
just to
Right.
keep our
Right.
brains active and alive and questioning and yeah, a little bit crazy too.
Or I've even thought, like, are they distractions when they do that? Are they preventing, does that
Mhm.
little action they did maybe prevent us,
Yeah.
10 minutes later from doing something stupid? Or, it's
Yeah.
it's all of the above, really.
Maybe test little tests that we don't quite have the full picture, so we don't really put it all together, but they're little tests and they're
Right.
little glimpses and little teaching episodes. I mean, as long as they don't hurt you. And that's the thing. You mentioned
Yep.
that there are no documented cases, right, at Bradshaw of people
Right.
being hurt or animals being mutilated or anything like that. That seems to be different from at least what I've heard from Skinwalker and some of the other places. Is that
Yeah.
true, do you think?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely true.
That in itself is interesting also.
And it doesn't, I rarely ever feel threatened there. The
Yeah.
only time I've ever feel threatened is like if you hear the sound of something big, but that's just your internal instinct. It's not like the creature who was doing anything threatening. It's just because the
Right.
first few times I hear something weird, I feel threatened because I'm like, oh, there's something out here. I don't know what it is. But there's never been anything out there that tried to threaten me necessarily. So, even when the creatures are right there and we can't
Mhm.
see them, but you can hear them or they show up in your pictures, it's really, it's really a bizarre but magical
Yeah, and
thing to encounter.
you don't know their intent. That's kind of where the fear comes from within humans. Is I don't well, if you can't see them, that's kind of scary too. If you don't know who they
Right.
are, if you hear them stampeding around you, your fight or flight reflex kicks in. Maybe that's
Yeah.
part of a test too, is to see how long is this guy going to stick around? Is he going
Well,
to
no, no, I
drive out
really
of
think,
here
yeah, no, it
screaming?
feels like that sometimes. Yeah. They're kind of like poking back, like, oh, you think you're brave coming out here at night? Let's see if you are. But
Well, I mean, I really admire people like you who go out and, like you said, boots on the ground, and you're up at middle of the night in the middle of nowhere. That takes some intestinal fortitude, to
and
do that. But it proves that you're very interested in getting some, learning something about what it is,
yeah.
what's going
And
on there.
took took a job shoveling horse poop in the mornings to just to live out here. So I mean, it was definitely a commitment, but it turns out I do like being a ranch hand. It is pretty fun. Horse poop isn't that bad to shovel, but
Well, it's
um
a simpler life. I mean, especially these
no,
days
well, the
when
other
things
thing
are
is it's given
crazy.
me a given me a much better understanding of common animal tracks.
Hmm.
Horses, pigs, things like that we have here on the ranch. And, just being able to see them every day, seeing how they are in different types of dirt when it's wet and dry, and just seeing how they can look different and things like that. So, I mean, definitely a big advantage. And it's been a lot of fun, learning all this new stuff that since I moved out here. But
Yeah, that's good. That's it sounds like I mean, you're very enthusiastic about the situation you're in, and it does benefit the rest of us when you um, produce these informational pieces, these documentaries. The first one you said is 4 hours long. Is that right?
it's like, I think it's like 3 hours and 40 minutes, I think.
Three, almost four. What? And so the second, you said you're working on another documentary. Is that? Do you have a timeline
Well,
on that, or any more information about that?
no, not really. I'm collecting the footage for it now. The
And
sequel is going to be even, we've told the story in the first one about, out here and what's happening. So the second one, I want it to be really heavy on evidence footage.
mhm.
We'll have some voiceover. I have some things to say and stories to tell, but it would be great if most of it was just showing footage of crazy stuff that we've captured out here.
Oh yeah, very interesting. Now, Dan has one last question. He says, "Where can we get merch? The baby Raven merch?
Oh yeah. So
Is it on
so
Instagram?"
far,
Yeah.
no, so it's coming along. So far, I've been doing it the way I did my street art. So when I was making street art, I was just trying to make something that kind of looked cool or kind of, change someone's day a bit, and then you go put it up and then that's it. But then I
Mhm.
started figuring I could do that with something people can wear. So I'd make like small batches of clothing, like hoodies or hats. I'd make like five at a time in a certain
Mhm.
color or design and just sell them real quick. They'd usually be sold pretty quick when I would post them on my story. But I
Mhm.
do have a bunch of hat pins of the Raven logos
Mhm.
that, yeah, usually I pass them out when people ask, or somebody sends me a direct message on Instagram with their address. I'll send them a hat pin. Because I think it would be kind of cool to just have people out there joining that movement of, yeah, we're into all this stuff, we want to go to the places where the stuff happens so we can try and encounter it.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Get people interested. I mean, there's a lot of people like us who want to,
Yeah,
but again, fewer who actually go out and do stuff. So again, I want to express my gratefulness that there are people like you who are out there doing it and producing these these pieces of evidence that we can sit in the comfort of our home and not have to go out at 3 a.m. to some, you know,
yeah.
isolated
Well,
place that's going to freak us out. I can watch it from the comfort of my own office, my computer. So that's nice to have. I look forward to the second one too. As soon as I get off of the computer here, I'm going to look at your 4 hour documentary. Might not finish it all tonight, but
yeah,
over
yeah,
the
that'll
coming
happen.
weekend, we'll take that in.
Yeah,
Um, but are there any other? I think we're over an hour here, so I want to respect your time and kind of come
sure.
to a close here. Do you have any other information that you want to get out there? I'll put your contact information, whatever you want, website, Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram is the main contact source.
Okay.
If they want to read a book and get some more info on the history of the things that happen at Bradshaw,
Hmm.
there's a book called Merging Dimensions that's
Ah,
written by Tom Dongo and Linda Bradshaw.
right.
And Tom Dongo was the one who kind of helped me find the ranch and has really helped me kind of take the torch and run with it as he's gotten older and doesn't really going out there that much, and so he's been a great help to me. But his book, him and Linda's book, really tells a lot of crazy stories about things they saw on the ranch. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. That's a good reference to get into. Then it's at a baby raven, right? Your Instagram.
Yep, that's the one.
Okay, cool. Well, Dan says he wants me to ask you if you could come back for an update,
Yeah, oh
especially
yeah, absolutely.
this
Yeah.
second documentary is shaping up, or if it's finished or whatever. You just want to share some of the cool stuff in it. We're here and willing to have you back on at some point. I think that
Yeah,
would be
we'll
a
definitely.
good
No, we have to
conversation.
do that. Yeah, no, you guys are good. Where I feel like we're really on kind of the same page about a lot of this stuff too. It's enjoyable talking to you
Same,
guys, and
same wavelength. Yeah, definitely. It's always fun to
yeah,
talk about. We could talk about this for 5 or 6 hours, I'm sure, but we would try to keep it
yeah,
to a reasonable hour or hour and a half or so as a show.
yeah.
But anyway, I'd like to thank you, HooDoo Tall, and on behalf of my co-host Dan, who's incommunicado for the most part tonight, he'd like to say thank
Just
you.
listening. Yeah.
Yeah, listening with intense interest. Uh, we thank you for coming on to the show, and we'll look forward to speaking with you again in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure I'll talk to you guys soon.
Okay, thanks again.
All right. Bye
Good
bye.
night.